Australia, 1869. The gold rush was no longer a dream. It was a graveyard of ambition. In the early 1850s, when gold was first discovered in Victoria, men left families, businesses, entire countries. Ships arrived daily. Fortunes were made overnight. But that was nearly 20 years earlier. By 1869, the easy gold was gone. The surface deposits were stripped bare. The rivers had been churned and rechurned. Two Cornish miners worked a modest claim near an old tree outside the tiny settlement of Moleagle. Their names, John Deason and Richard Oates. They were not adventurers. They were not dreamers. They were survivors. Cornish miners were known for discipline and technical skill. In Australia, gold could be anywhere or nowhere. For years, Deason and Oates worked their small plot of land. No massive finds, just enough dust to stay afloat. They were not poor, but they were not secure. Every week without gold meant fear. Moleagle was not glamorous. No grand town hall, no shining storefronts, just rough huts, timber structures, red soil, wind, and silence. The land was dry and unforgiving. Dust coated everything: boots, clothes, lungs. The ground was hard-packed clay. Digging was physical punishment. Imagine the mental toll. Swing, strike, nothing, swing, strike, nothing, every day, for years. The morning of February 5th, 1869 was ordinary. That's what makes history terrifying. It never announces itself. Deason worked near the base of a tree, a place he had dug before. He raised his pick, brought it down. Clang, not the dull thud of earth, not the crack of stone, something metallic. He stopped. In mining, sound means everything. He cleared the top layer of dirt. The pick had exposed a curved surface, smooth, yellow, but not bright like jewelry. Deep, earthy gold. He thought it must be a small nugget attached to rock. He dug wider. The yellow continued. Not an edge, not a fragment, a surface. Oates came over. They both knelt in silence, carefully removing soil. The object did not end. It widened. It thickened. Their breathing changed. This was no ordinary find. Miners are cautious by nature. Excitement can ruin judgment. But at some point, reality becomes undeniable. The mass was enormous. They tried to lift a corner. It barely budged. Finding large gold during the rush was dangerous. If word spread, your claim could be challenged. Thieves could target you. Gold was not just wealth. It was tension. So they said nothing, just controlled breathing. As more of the mass emerged, its shape became monstrous. It wasn't pretty like museum gold. It was raw, irregular, like something grown underground rather than formed. By late afternoon, they had exposed most of it. It weighed too much to lift fully. Estimates later would put it at over 72 kilograms, more than 150 pounds. Imagine that weight in your hands. Imagine realizing your entire future is sitting in the dirt. They could not carry it openly through town. They could not leave it in the ground. So they made a decision. They would wait until dark. They covered it carefully with soil, marking the spot in their minds. Then they walked away. When darkness settled over Moleagle, the fields were quiet. They returned, dug it out again, this time fully. Even freed from the earth, it resisted them. They strained, sweat mixing with dust. Every shadow looked like a witness. They finally managed to move it back toward Deason's hut. But there was another problem. The nugget was too large to fit through the door. Think about that. The largest gold nugget in history, stopped by a wooden doorway. They had no choice. They would have to break it. Before dawn, under dim light, they took tools to it, the largest alluvial gold nugget ever discovered, and they began smashing it into pieces. Not for greed, for survival. They did not know yet that they had found the largest gold nugget ever recorded in human history. They only knew one thing. If they survived the next 24 hours, everything would change, fade out. The nugget lay on the dirt floor of the hut. Even in dim lamplight, it looked unreal, not polished, not refined, not shining like jewelry. It was dense, primitive, almost ugly. But its presence filled the room. Two men stood over it, John Deason and Richard Oates. They weren't celebrating. They were calculating. Because gold that size wasn't just wealth. It was risk. By 1869, the Victorian goldfields were not lawless, but they weren't peaceful either. Word of a large find could spread in hours. Claims could be disputed. Theft was common. And even if no one attacked them, there was another threat: greed from institutions. Large fines drew attention from banks, officials, and investors, so instead of shouting in triumph, they whispered. The nugget wouldn't fit through the hut door. That detail matters. It tells you how massive it was. They tried angling it, tilting it, rotating it. Nothing. It was simply too big. Now pause and think about the decision they faced. Leave it outside? Impossible. Hide it again? Risky. There was only one option: break it. Your first act with the largest gold ever found is destruction. They laid it down, took tools, and struck it. The sound would not have been hollow. Gold is dense. It resists, but it yields. Chunk by chunk, they reduced history into manageable pieces. This is why no photographs exist, no triumphant image, no staged portrait with the intact nugget, because survival demanded speed. By the time the sun rose, the welcome stranger no longer existed as one piece. Morning. The walk to town. They waited until daylight. Then, carrying portions of the broken mass, they walked toward the nearby settlement of Dunolly. Every step required composure. Imagine passing other miners, making small talk, knowing you are holding a fortune under cloth. You cannot walk too fast. That draws suspicion. You cannot walk too slow. That invites conversation. Control is everything. They approached the London Chartered Bank branch in Dunolly. The clerks had seen gold before. They had weighed large fines. They were not easily impressed. When Deason and Oates explained what they had, the reaction was disbelief, until the cloth came off, and the broken slabs hit the counter. Silence. The weight of gold changes the air in a room. It absorbs sound. The bankers stared, measured, reweighed, measured again. The scales strained. After removing impurities and attached stone, the refined weight exceeded 70 kilograms, over 2,500 troy ounces. At the time, its value was roughly $10,000. That number in 1869 was staggering. To put it into perspective, skilled workers earned maybe $50 a year. Small farms sold for a few £100s. This single discovery equaled decades of earnings for most men. It was generational wealth. News travels faster than intention. Within hours, Dunolly buzzed. Within days, the region knew. Reporters arrived. Sketch artists attempted reconstructions. But they faced a problem. The nugget was already gone. Melted. The bank quickly processed it. Gold that large is not displayed. It is converted into bars. Stability over spectacle. The largest nugget in history. Never photographed. Never preserved. Just absorbed. It was called the Welcome Stranger. Why? Some say it reflected the unexpected nature of the find. Others believe it was an ironic nod, as if fortune itself had arrived unannounced. Regardless, the name stuck, and it remains legendary. To this day, the Welcome Stranger holds the record for the largest alluvial gold nugget ever discovered. Not in California, not in South Africa, in rural Victoria. The psychology shift. When a discovery like this happens, it inspires hope and distorts reality. Miners suddenly believed the fields were not exhausted. If they found this in 1869, what else might be buried? Digging intensified. But here's the truth. Most of those renewed efforts failed. The Welcome Stranger was a statistical anomaly, a geological accident, a rare pocket preserved by chance. The land had simply revealed one final secret. By the end of the week, Deason and Oates were wealthier than they had ever imagined, but they were no longer just miners, they were stories. In part 3, we'll examine how the discovery reshaped the economy, because sometimes the biggest discoveries are the last ones. The question that haunted miners wasn't, how lucky were they? It was, how was that even possible? Because by 1869, the Victorian gold rush was considered mature. Most of the easy surface gold had already been taken. Thousands of miners had passed over the same ground. So how does the largest alluvial nugget in recorded history sit unnoticed, inches below the soil? To answer that, we have to talk geology. Gold does not form in nuggets the way most people imagine. It doesn't grow like crystals in caves. It forms deep underground, inside quartz veins, under extreme heat and pressure millions of years ago. Over time, erosion breaks those veins apart. Water carries fragments downhill, rivers smooth and shape them. That's how nuggets are formed, by natural transport and compaction. But here's the critical detail. Large nuggets are statistically rare, extremely rare. As gold moves through rivers, it breaks down. Fragments get smaller over time. For something weighing over 70 kilograms to survive that process, it must have broken off in a single massive piece and traveled a very short distance. It avoided fracture and detection for decades. That combination borders on geological absurdity. The nugget was discovered only about 3 centimeters beneath the surface. 3. That means plows had likely passed over it, boots had stepped above it, tools had scraped near it. So why wasn't it found earlier? 2 reasons: soil movement and human assumption. Australian goldfields experience subtle but constant soil displacement. Wind erosion, seasonal rain, animal burrowing. Over years, the earth shifts. The nugget slowly migrated upward. Miners often reworked areas only to a certain depth. Once a patch was considered worked out, effort shifted elsewhere. And that is critical. The welcome stranger was found in ground others had abandoned. That changes everything. When news spread across Victoria, it triggered something dangerous: renewed speculation. Gold fields operate on belief. If miners believe there's more gold, labor surges. Equipment sells, claims multiply. That's exactly what happened. In towns like Dunolly, activity intensified overnight. Abandoned claims were reopened. New diggers flooded in. Merchants stocked more supplies. Optimism without data is volatility. Within months, most of those operations yielded nothing. The welcome stranger was not a sign of resurgence. It was a final echo. By the 1870s, the story had grown beyond fact. Sketches exaggerated its size. Some accounts inflated the weight. Others claimed it glowed like polished metal. None of that was accurate. It was rough, lumpy, covered in quartz and ironstone. But legend demands spectacle. And since no photograph existed, imagination filled the gap. Absence of evidence amplified the myth. The London Chartered Bank wasted no time. The gold was melted almost immediately. Security, transporting intact nuggets invites theft. Melting standardizes value, converts anomaly into liquidity. From a historical perspective, it erased a monument. Today, replicas exist, but the original, gone forever, absorbed into bullion, possibly minted into coins, possibly sitting anonymously in vaults. Now let's talk about the psychological aftermath. John Deason and Richard Oates did not become tycoons. They did not build empires. They purchased land, lived comfortably, remained relatively quiet. Some fortunes create dynasties, others simply stabilize lives. The welcome stranger was the latter. It was transformative, but not imperial. Since 1869, no larger alluvial nugget has been recorded. Modern mining methods are part of the reason. Large nuggets today are often broken by machinery before identification. Heavy equipment doesn't gently uncover, it crushes. Preservation is rare. The era of individual prospectors allowed rare preservation. Industrial extraction does not. Ironically, technological advancement reduces the chance of dramatic discoveries. The welcome stranger teaches something subtle about human behavior. It proves that exhausted land may not be exhausted. Consensus can be wrong. Statistical impossibilities occasionally materialize. But it also warns. One anomaly does not change the system. Most miners who chased renewed hope left disappointed. Hope surged. Reality corrected it. That tension defines every resource rush. Oil, diamonds, crypto, real estate. One massive win resets perception. Thousands follow chasing replication. Few succeed. Picture it again. A quiet patch of earth in Molyagal. Thousands walked past it. 2 men happened to strike differently. Beneath inches of soil lay a miracle. Not because destiny chose them, but because probability never reaches 0. The ground decides to answer back. After the gold was melted, after the money was paid, after the headlines faded, one question remained. Was that the last one? Or is something even bigger still buried? When the welcome stranger was discovered, the region experienced one final surge. Prospectors returned, claims were reopened, ground was reworked aggressively. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Nothing remotely comparable was found. The massive nugget was not the beginning of a new wave. It was the final punctuation mark. Over time, Moliagel shrank. The population thinned. Today, it is a quiet locality, more historical site than mining hub. There is now a monument marking the discovery. A replica stands where the original once slept. Tourists visit, photographs are taken, but the earth beneath it, still silent. You might think modern technology would make a bigger discovery more likely. Advanced metal detectors, satellite mapping, AI-assisted modeling. In some ways, yes. But here's the paradox. Large surface nuggets are less likely to survive modern mining. Why? Because industrial mining destroys anomalies. Bulk processing pulverizes material. Everything gets reduced before anyone notices its form. A man with a pick might expose a nugget intact. A modern machine likely fragments it instantly. The old methods were better at preserving miracles. Australia has produced other famous nuggets, but none larger. The Welcome Stranger remains the largest alluvial gold nugget ever recorded. That makes it statistically extraordinary. Some modern finds in Western Australia and Alaska have been impressive, but they remain smaller. For over 150 years, nothing has surpassed it. Could something bigger still exist? Geologically, yes. Statistically, extremely unlikely. Most gold-rich regions have been intensely worked, repeatedly, with improving technology. If a nugget larger than 70 kilo existed near the surface, it would have been found. But not zero. There could be one buried deeper, one hidden under farmland, or beneath a forest never prospected. Nature does not follow neat patterns. It clusters unpredictably. The earth does not reveal everything at once. The Welcome Stranger was found in ground considered finished. That detail changes how we think about opportunity. Most had moved on. They believed the region was exhausted. Two men continued, not because they were certain, but because they hadn't quit. History often records breakthroughs in places others dismissed, not because they were obvious, but because someone refused to follow consensus. Mindset matters. John Deason lived quietly after the discovery. Richard Oates eventually moved and lived modestly. Neither became legends in their lifetime, but their discovery did. The nugget itself was melted, its physical form gone forever. But the story survived, and stories outlive metal. Imagine this. A farmer repairs fencing. A detectorist sweeps land. A remote region remains lightly explored. A signal sounds. Digging begins. 3 inches down. A shape emerges. Heavy. Impossible. Could it happen? Yes. Will it? That's the mystery. Picture the dry soil of Moliagel. Dust. Wind. Silence. Imagine something beneath it, just waiting. Proof that the impossible sometimes lies inches away from ordinary ground, somewhere on this planet. Another one still does.